but I think more what we have here is kind of a sleeping giant situation where, if these smaller, less flashy markets are performing so well, that really indicates that these larger markets can be tapped into and perform well.
Sure, and I think that really speaks to a point that you made in our last conversation on the World Cup, which you mentioned that the overall talent in MLS has taken a step forward. And one piece of evidence was shown by the number of players participating in the World Cup. How has that contributed to the rising popularity of soccer in the US?
I think that for MLS to really take the next level is to really raise the talent level of its league. Right now, obviously, there's the big five leagues in Europe where, most of the more talented players in the world end up. That's where a lot of soccer interest is concentrated. You've seen MLS come forward leaps and bounds. As you mentioned, they had the sixth most players of any league at the World Cup. I think that's really important because MLS doesn't just want to be a North American league. I think obviously having that concentration of your interest and fan here is important because we have so much commercial value here. But one of the things that the Apple deal really banks on is having kind of this global presence and this global interest. And when you think about having international stars in MLS, that opens up markets all around the world. And markets all around the world means more subscribers. So more subscribers will generate more revenue for them on the league level. So ultimately, I think they're going to continue to get better. It's really kind of a massive step forward where MLS is no longer kind of a place where people go to end their careers. You see young, great talent develop there as well. You see kind of, players move on to European clubs for high sums. And also it's become an important pipeline for American talent. I think while the main players we were following in the World Cup for Team USA are playing overseas, a lot of them, their origins stem back here. FC Dallas, for example, who is one of the lower valued teams in the league, has a reputation of having a great academy and really developing players. So I think that being able to develop these players, being able to raise the talent level of the league and move the needle forward is really going to change the way we see MLS in the coming years.
I do want to pivot to your most recent reporting, and you said that at least 19 billionaires or members of billionaire families have key ownership stakes in MLS franchises. Why are so many ultra wealthy investors flocking to the league?
I think it's important to know that there are, several billionaires who've kind of believed in MLS from day one. And, Robert Kraft and Philip Anschutz, who respectively own the Revolution, the Galaxy, have been involved from day one. And I think ultimately it comes down to this belief in the potential of soccer here in North America. Obviously, sports assets have become really hot. You see with the Phoenix Suns or the Denver Broncos selling for record prices that people are willing to get in for tremendous amounts of money. Sports ultimately have been proven to be a recession-resistant asset. Some people can say recession-proof. Bennett Rosenthal, owner of LAFC, said to me that he likes to call it recession resistant. And I think that's interesting because they tend not to necessarily correlate with the market. They tend to appreciate a ton over long periods of time. And it's basically kind of a safe place, I guess, to park your money if we're going to simplify it here. So I think where MLS plays into that fact, is a number of reasons. For one, if you're going to go out and buy an NFL team, the prices are astronomically high, whereas for a significantly less amount of money, you can buy control of an MLS team at this point. Ultimately, people understand that there's a growth story to be told in MLS, and they're banking on that these franchises have room to run. Apple will bring them closer to that. The revenues will continue to grow up. One thing to note is the revenue multiples are still high compared to other sports. MLS tends to trade at levels relative to growth stocks, more than, the other existing big four professional leagues. And part of that is that we've seen, billionaires come in and, pay big money for these franchises. Real Salt Lake was sold to David Blitzer and Ryan Smith early in 2022. I'm almost forgetting we're in 2023 at this point.
I know.
So, the more people that come in and believe in this are really driving it up. It's a bet on the growth of the sport. It's more affordable than some of these other franchises. And, there's only a finite amount of MLS teams. There's still expansion to come. But like any sport, once you have these set amount of teams, you can either get into that or you can't be involved. So it's almost like an exclusive club.
So is an investment in MLS more exciting than, let's say, the NFL now because of this exponential growth factor that you're saying?
I think it's hard to predict what's going to grow faster. And I mean, obviously, the NFL has much more mature and established revenues and, essentially controls the day of the week. I think it comes down to what the owner desires and what they're interested in. I think there are a lot of people who, have more of a global interest in soccer or football, as you call it, around the world. Has more of a global appeal, whereas American football is more concentrated here. I mean, ultimately, the NFL is a behemoth. These teams are some of the most valuable in the world. The Dallas Cowboys are worth $8 billion. So it's hard to even, compare MLS to NFL in that regard. The NFL's commercial and financial potential is strong. It continues to be strong. But ultimately, there are people who and MLS has shown us that soccer appeals to them more. But one interesting trend is there are a number of NFL owners who also own MLS teams. So I think that, there's a synergy there.
This whole conversation really has revolved around the potential of soccer in the United States. So I do want to take a step forward here, look into the future. What is next for MLS?
Yeah, so I think in the immediate future, obviously this is year one of the Apple deal. So this is going to be a very grand experiment about how things go and how much they'll be able to drive. It's a long deal. They're under terms for 10 years. So it's not necessarily, make or break, in the first month of a 10-year deal. But I think it'll be interesting to see how many people are able to navigate and gravitate to, a streaming first experience. Obviously, being able to watch it on your iPhone or any Apple product is a kind of a key thing, but ultimately people still gravitate to linear TV. It's just kind of the way sports fans are. MLS has the benefit of having younger fans who are maybe more digital native, but also, it's an experiment. It's a gamble. We're going to see how it plays out. I think also it's important to note that MLS is launching its 29th team this year, St. Louis Soccer Club. So they're going to start playing, and also they're going to add a 30th team. The deal is not closed, but a well-placed source has told us that the next price for the expansion team is going to be $500 million. It'll likely be Vegas or San Diego. So I think that's really interesting because $500 million is a really big step up from the last expansion price, which was $325 paid by David Tepper for Charlotte FC. So the fact that, it's gone from $325 to $500 and there are interested parties willing to pay that really shows that the growth is still coming and it's still being driven by these things.
Is any other team anywhere close to being valued at $1 billion?
So the Galaxy we value them at $925 million, and they're another one that they're arguably the most famous and the most, the first super team of MLS. They're one of the best success stories. They're owned by Philip Anschutz and Anschutz Entertainment Group, so that's more of a conglomerate type thing, and their revenues are growing too. So I think they're interesting. They're obviously not where LAFC is right now by our math, but to be a $900 million franchise is still pretty impressive.
Great. Justin, thank you so much.
Thank you, Brittany.